Hi everyone, and welcome to my in-depth tutorial on vertex normals in Maya. So first, some theory. A normal is a perpendicular vector pointing away from a surface. So, what does that mean? Well, let's say this green line is your surface. A normal is a line that points at 90 degrees away from it, like so. So, what about curvy surfaces? Well, at any point along a surface, you can also draw a line 90 degrees away from that surface at that point, and that's a normal. So if I were to choose here, 90 degrees would be about there, here, approximately there. You get the idea. So, how are these normals used in 3D packages? Basically, a good way to think about it is that normals describe the shape of a surface to the lighting engine. So let's take the simple case of flat shading first. Each polygon has a face normal, which tells the flat lighting system all it needs to know about how to shade the surface, which is basically the angle of the polygon. Now let's have a look at that in Maya. Here's a polygon, and to display its normal, go to Display menu, Polygons, and tick on Face Normals. And there you can see it pointing 90 degrees away from the surface. Here's a more complicated shape, and if we look at its normals, Polygons, Face Normals, you see they all stick out 90 degrees from the surface. So, how does this shading work? Well, let's look at it from the lighting engine side. Imagine it shades in a polygon in steps, going from one side all the way to the other. And as it's shading it in, it uses the normal to decide how light to shade it. And as there is only one normal per polygon, it uses the same angle all the way along. This produces our flat shading. Now let's move on to smooth shading and vertex normals. Every polygon has a number of vertices describing its shape via its corners. And each of these vertices has its own normal called the vertex normal. As before, these normals describe the shape of the surface to the lighting engine, but now each polygon has more than one normal, so the lighting is done smoothly from one normal to the next. This lets us make shapes with smooth appearance without adding extra polygons. Here, the green curve shows the shaded result, nice and smooth, even though it's based off 3 polygons shown in blue. Let's see that in Maya now. Here is 3 polygons smoothly shaded. And let's have a look at its vertex normals. Display, polygon, vertex normals, and there they are. Now let's see how this smooth shading works. Again, like before, let's imagine that the polygon gets shaded in from one side to the other. In this case, we've reproduced the same effect as flat shading. But what happens if we change the vertex normals at each end? The shading smoothly changes the normals from one side to the other, giving us a nice curve appearance. So let's put this all into practice. Vertex normals and smooth shading allows us to represent curvy objects with the minimum number of polygons. So if we want these 3 polygons to represent a nice gentle curved surface, we can use their vertex normals to define that shape. Remember, as the polygons are being shaded, the normals are being smoothly blended from one to the other. So that defines the shape of the shading, the curved lighting effect that we get. Here's a useful example. Instead of a gentle curve over these three polygons, let's say we just wanted to have a nice smooth corner or a nice bevel. So again, what we need to do is we need to define the shape of this surface using our normals. So at our first vertex, its vertex normal has to be 90 degrees from the surface. So that's like that. And next one on the surface is still horizontal at this point, so our 90 degree normal goes like that. Then round our curve, the surface is already pointing vertical, so our normal points like so. And again for our bottom one. So if we imagine all our in-between normals that are being smoothed, we've defined a surface that's flat here, then gently curves round this corner, and then goes flat down here again. Just what we wanted. I'll do one more 2D example before we go into Maya. With our same three polygons, let's say we want this shape with a sharp corner here and a gentle curve here. Again, let's define this shape with our normals. So at the first vertex, well, that's fairly obvious, straight up. Let's try this one at the bottom. Well, 90 degrees to that surface is, I'd say, about here. Then this nice smooth corner, well, 90 degrees to the surface is about there. But then we get to this point. How do we do this corner? If we look at it from this flat section of surface, normal would point straight up at 90 degrees. But then if we look at it at this curved area, then the normal would be approximately here. So what do? The important thing to remember is that each polygon has its own vertex normals. So if we look at each polygon separately, you can see how each vertex can have its own normal. Some share the exact same normal as others when there's a smooth transition, or some have very different normals when there's a sharp transition. So with vertex normals and smooth shading, we can give low poly geometry a variety of smooth shading effects. Taking our example with this simple 3 polygon shape, here are just a few examples of what lovely shading we can give it using vertex normals. And here are those vertex normals. So let's go into Maya and see how all this is done properly. Here we are back in Maya with our nice simple 3 polygon shape. You might be able to tell by these normals that this is smoothly shaded. If I unselect it, you can see it's a nice smoothly shaded shape. So each polygon in this mesh has its own vertex normals for every corner. If I blow this model up, you can see what I mean. Here's those 3 polygons separated out, and each polygon has 4 corners, each of which has a vertex normal. Now that's the same in here, it's just that they're the same normal, so they look like one normal in each of these corners, but there's in fact 2 on each of these corners. So how do we go about viewing these separate normals without going through all the hassle of blowing up the object every time? Well, there's a special mode in Maya for selecting vertex normals, and in that mode it'll separate them out temporarily for us. If I right click on the model and go to vertex face, you'll see it separates out the model, and now we can see all our separate vertex normals. This is the mode we actually select our vertex normals by clicking at the base of them, like so. This exploded view is just a temporary visual effect allowing us to edit our normals. Once we've done and we return to normal, the mesh looks like a normal mesh again. So, now that we know how to view and select our vertex normals, let's see what tools Maya provides for us to edit them. Most of the tools we'll be needing you'll find under the polygon menu set, Normals menu. So let's say we want to make flat angular shading. That means we need to set the vertex normals on each face to all pointing 90 degrees away. And we do this with the Set to Face menu option. How this works is you just select the verts you want to change, press that button, Set to Face, and it sets those verts to 90 degrees from this face. This works across multiple faces, so if I select these verts here on both these faces, Set to Face, you can see it's done the whole lot. And now you can see we've got a nice angular shading. So, what if we want a nice smooth curved shading effect? Well, then we want our normals to slowly angle over in a gentle fashion. And the tool we're going to use to do that is the Average Normals button. How this works is you select two or more vertex normals and it'll find the normal that's halfway between them, so the average normal. In this case we've got these two, press average normal and it sets them to what the in-between angle would have been. So if I repeat that for the others, select two, set them to the average, select these two, set them to the average, select these two, set them to the average. And now you'll see we've got a nice gentle shading effect. So let's move on to a slightly more complicated example with a nice curved beveled corner. You can see that the top and bottom faces have normals that are perpendicular to them at 90 degrees, whereas the middle face has normals that are the same as its neighbouring normals. So to start with, we'll set the top and bottom faces. So the top, all the normals need to be pointing straight up, so that's set to face. This bottom face, they have to set to its face as well. Oops. Set to face, there we go. And now we need to set the normals in this middle face. But we have a problem. We don't want these to be 90 degrees from this face, and we don't want to try and average them because that's the wrong angle. So we need to be able to modify these in a different way. Luckily, Maya provides several more methods for modifying vertex normals. If we select these two, the next I'm going to show you is the Vertex Normal Edit tool. So we select that, we get a modifier similar to the rotate modifier. And with this, we can directly modify our vertex normals. So we want these to be pointing straight up and these two to be pointing straight across. But as you can imagine, this isn't actually very accurate, and small differences will show up as tiny creases or seams. So to set our normals accurately, we can use a different tool. Right, select these two normals here. We can use the Set Vertex Normal tool. If you select the option box, with this we can actually specify the numerical values of our normal. Now x1, y0 Z0, that's not right, that's going to probably point to the side. Yeah. So we can actually point ours directly up by taking that to 0, Y to 1, pressing apply, and then it's exactly up. And the same with these. If we select those two, set X to 1, Y to 0, press apply, now it's exactly pointing to the side. Now, although that worked fine, you can imagine that's rather a laborious task to keep doing for lots of normals. If you think about it, the task we actually did here was we copied the normal from one place and pasted it into another. Now, unfortunately, Maya doesn't provide a copy and paste for Vertex Normals, but there are several free tools on the web to do this. And if you haven't got such a tool, I'll show you the small bit of script you need to do it automatically. Here is the small piece of mail code that allows you to copy a normal. I suggest that you make a shelf button for it. Select the whole piece of text and middle drag it to create a shelf button. And here is the small piece of mail code to paste the normals. Again, I suggest making another shelf button with it. Now that we have these two shelf buttons, if I mess up these normals with the normal editing tool, let's say I put these over here, I'll put them over there, maybe some crazy number over there. Now, if we select our top facing normal, press our first button, which is the copy, select our top two of the middle face and press our paste button, paste them straight up. Then we can select our sideways normal down here, press the copy button, select our two normals and press the paste button. And that's accurate and nice and simple and fast. Let's have a look at our object, and now we have a nice smooth beveled corner. If you missed that code, I'll include it in the information on the video. Now, before I go on to a more complicated example, there's a few more tools I'd like to show you. Firstly, Maya provides some nice useful little utility tools to help smooth or harden edges. You see these hard edges, if I select them, instead of having to manually edit all the vertex normals to make them soft, there's a nice little helpful utility called Soften Edge. And you can see it's softened them up. And there's the similar normals to before. Conversely, if we want to harden them, we'll select them again and use the Harden Edge menu option. There you can see these normals are separated again, and it gives us a nice hard appearance again. One thing you may have noticed while editing some of these normals, let's say I average these, you see they've gone yellow. Now if I select two more and press G to repeat the last operation, they're averaging out like they're meant to, but they're also going yellow. Now what this means is that yellow normals are what's called locked. And what are locked normals? Well, put simply, they're normals that don't change as you move the underlying mesh. So if I start moving this point around, you can see that the normal is still pointing in the same direction. It's kind of like telling Maya to leave this normal alone and let me be in charge of it. You can unlock normals simply. Just select them, go to the Normals menu and press Unlock Normals. And you'll see they've pinged back out because Maya's taken control and is calculating it automatically now. And just briefly, to lock them is just as simple. Select them, Normals, Lock Normals, and you see they've gone yellow again. That's about it for editing normals. So let's finish off the tutorial by doing a more complicated 3D example. Let's say we want to keep these edges hard, this hard, but this a nice smooth bevel going round the corner, smoothing to this hard surface but leaving that edge hard. So we'll start by turning on Vertex Normals, and we'll go into face mode so we can see all our separate faces with their normals. Now we can go through each polygon and think about the surface shape we want to describe using our normals for each bit. So let's start off with this section. We want it to curve round in that kind of arc, so we want these normals to point out like this one below. So we'll copy that with our nice button, select these two and tell it to point out sideways. Same goes for this polygon down here. We want that same kind of nice curve on this edge, so these normals want to point again the same direction as those. So we'll paste them. Let's have a look. We're starting to get a nice smooth curve. Now let's go on to this central triangle. Let's think about this corner. If you look at this sphere I've made, that's the kind of shape, this curvy section of a sphere we want. So this corner here, we want it to stick out in that same direction. So we go back to here. Let's copy that. So we want it to go in that same direction. Let's paste that in. Have a look. And now we're starting to get that curve go round the corner. Now the last bit to fix are these two sharp edges. Let's have a look at that. Well, have a little think about the shape we want to describe again. We want this surface to come along here and then curve round and come down here. So, like our curved example before, we want those two to be merged into their average. So if we average those, select these two here, difficult to see I know, and then we'll average those as well. Come back to our object view, and there we have it. We've left this edge hard, and on this corner we've got a nice smooth bevel going all the way around. Just for fun, let's smooth off these other sides as well. So we'll go back into Vertex Face mode. Again, think about the shape. We want it to curve round. So the normal here, if it's on that curve, 90 degrees away from that bottom part of that curve, will be facing out this direction. Same as these. So we'll copy that. These bottom two. We'll paste. We'll copy the top one. And these bottoms two will paste. Almost there, but there'll still be this sharp edge. Let's fix that. So we'll go back to Vertex Face mode. Now let's think. That's curving down nicely. Let's have a look at these edges. These edges, you can see the normals are pointing away from each other. That's giving us that sharp edge. So we want this to curve round in a nice curve at the top instead. So I think you can tell at the top of that curve is horizontal, so the normal 90 degrees away would be pointing straight up. That's these again. Let's copy that. Let's paste them in. These ones would be 90 degrees to a curve. It's horizontal that way, so it's these again, so I'll copy that one, paste it into those, and that last little point on the top, well, if you think that curve comes around to the top, it's horizontal, that part of the curve we'd want. So it's another upward facing normal. Copy that one, paste it into there. Let's have a look. Now we've got a beautifully beveled, curved cube, but it's only made out of a few polygons. Two little tips before we finish. If you're trying to use a tool to modify normals like a hardened edge tool, you click it and nothing happens, always check your normals to see whether they're locked. In this case you can see that they are yellow, and that's why an automatic tool will have no effect because your normals are locked. Just unlock them and then that tool will work. My other little tip is that if you want edges to have a nice smooth connection, their normals must all be the same, like we've got here. If these normals are slightly different, you'll get a sharp transition. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Bye!